Alright, here's our rainy, cold day. We got a house that we're going to look at. We got some cracks. There's our house. It's a brick and a vinyl house. And they were noticing cracks, gaps on the inside. So here's some gaps at the ceiling crown, which can be typical, not necessarily a sign of anything, but once you add it all together, maybe it's an issue. Window gaps. This window got to be real hard to open. This is on the south side. We're going to get to know this side of the house real well. There's our gap. I tried it too. I almost couldn't open that window all the way. Some typical quote-unquote cracks. Some quote-unquote typical gaps in doors, hard to shut. They may be typical, but if you add them as a whole, could indicate a problem. Let's go look outside. A little crack over the garage door. That's not a structural thing. That's just a metal lintel right there. Sometimes they deflect a little bit. Crack the mortar. Right off the top, they've tried to do the right thing. They've got the gutter down, spouts underground. Problem is we don't know where the pipes are. I didn't see a pop-up, a drain, so it's always a possibility that thing is emptying its contents right at the foundation, causing settling. Here at the front, all these transitions count, the brick and stone, because if we're getting any water behind there at all. Okay, here's our first crack on the outside. It's small. 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. It's cracked the mortar and brick, which is a sign of a fast settlement. Let's go ahead and take a look underneath the house at this location. Here we are, same location under the house. Off the top, I can see we've got some water coming in. It was a pretty low area. Matter of fact, the humidity's high enough it's creating some mildew mold. And there's our water coming in. It's wet. Here's the back side of the house, back on the outside. Everything slopes to the house, which means all that water that gets channeled from not only rain and the gutters, but the adjacent neighbor's house goes straight to this house, goes straight to the foundation. Saturates it enough and makes it underneath the foundation. A few water stains there. I can see the water's been a couple inches high. Here's that south side again. This is that side I said the window was real hard to open. There's our second crack. This one's a horizontal one. That's usually a sign of a lot of movement. Goes all the way across. Now, it's pretty typical right there at the electric meter. There's our biggest crack right there. Let's go underneath. Now, I didn't see what I thought I was going to see underneath here. That's where our crack's at, right where the plumbing is. Be a great candidate for a sewer snake inspection. Make sure the sewer is not leaking. But also, with that sewer being there, it could channel water pretty easily. I'm just checking the girders, the shims at the piers, hardwood, metal. Didn't see what I thought I would see. I thought I'd see some issues here, but that cracked brick didn't reflect what I saw underneath. Here's our shims, no compression. Looks good. Did see some high water marks on the footing. Now there's a small a small crack right there at the foundation wall. Step down, but that's typical. I expect to see that. That's kind of a weaker spot in the wall. Piers look good. Now, it's also possible too, we've got a little settling because of the muddiness, the dampness around the piers. This doesn't help with floor deflection either. We've got some overnotched floor joists around plumbing. That always is a candidate for dips in the center of a house. A little water coming in between the foundation wall and footing. That doesn't help either. Somebody is aware of some issues. They've added bracing. So this is kind of in the center of the house toward the front, but somebody's put some really nice adjustable posts. Steel posts, and they've put on a solid concrete base. I Thing to do now is test to see if this base is sitting on anything. Is there any kind of a footing, or is this just laying on top of the gravel? So I'm not feeling anything. Try a different angle here. Yep, let's get aggressive with it. Yep, there's nothing there. So these base are not sitting on anything. They've settled also. Here's something interesting. Somebody has actually come on the other side of the house and added support. This isn't the typical support I usually see. I do see the cracks in the foundation wall. Pretty big. They've repaired it. The repairs are holding. They've added these concrete piers. But I'm not real sure what the piers are doing unless there's some kind of a brace or a jack that I'm not seeing maybe on the outside of the house that's attached to this. But something's been done. So we've established that the house has a history of some settling. Now let's try and figure out if we need the same application on the other side. Standing water. Time to get out of here. Let's go back to the outside. There's our crack again. That's called a booking crack. It's wider at one end than the other. Just like if you were to open a book, one gap would be wider. And like I said, it's typical to have this crack at the meter because some of those are face brick. Because that conduit has to have room behind there. So they'll cut the back off the brick and just keep the face. Pretty typical there. Alright, so we got a total of 2 vertical cracks on this south wall. And sometimes eyeing down the brick joints can help. Keep in mind when they strung that, the string itself has a gap, but I can see there's a big dip right there. And that dip that I saw eyeballing it down the side, that's exactly where our sewer came in. This could be our problem too, this cat. Wait a minute. This would be so much more dramatic with music. Alright, back in the hallway. Right here, this is a low spot. This wall to the left actually has an attic brace above it. There's a big dip here. Let's go up top. Right above here, here's the brace I was talking about. This is pushing down on that wall. It's a 6x6 T-brace. Look at this thing. It's massive. It's actually holding up part of the ridge, pushing all the way down, and if that's not centered at the crawl space level, it'll deflect between the 2 floor joists. So here's one of our culprits for the dip inside. This doesn't help either. This is an overnotched valley rafter. And if you know a tree trimmer, talk about a widowmaker, this is an attic widowmaker. They put boards up there that aren't supported on one side. That's a good way to fall through. Back down in the hall. That's where the brace was pushing right there. Put the golf ball down and let's see which way it travels. Yep. Travel into the center of the house. I also think that deflection and the settling, that's what's popping these tiles loose. Don't ignore these signs. If you have loose tiles, grout, cracking, it all adds up. But that could be what that is. That's that brace on the other side of the wall. Also, the ceiling in this bathroom, it's got a gap. These are all things that we all notice in our own house. Just got to add them up. Back in the hallway, going the other direction. Let's see what it's doing. Yep, wants to run right back to the center of the house. Let's put it on the opposite direction. Oh, there's our buddy again. Don't trust him. Don't ever turn your back on a cat. The reason I use a golf ball is because I figure if the dip is big enough to overcome the dimples, it's a problem. So by setting this down, that slope, because every floor has a considerable amount of slope or a slight amount of slope. Alright, so here's our bill. So after another company came out and did some further investigation, we've got almost a $9,000 to $10,000 bill. This is an expensive one, so remember, in your house, don't ignore those little signs. Don't ignore the cracked grout and just rack everything up to, well, that's a typical house settling. Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Subscribe to our channel and we'll keep you in the loop.